This is Joe,
Michelle,
Melissa,
and Shannon
with More Than a Sniff, where we talk about everything dog.
from training to nutrition,
from behavior modification to grooming, from vet visits to dog parks.
From getting to know us to having guests. Today we're going to talk about our series of connection. There's so much to talk about on how to build connection, what is connection, and all the things that we talk about in our lessons with connection. And so today we're going to talk about obedience and how obedience relates to connection and what obedience truly means in the world of dog training and what that perception is. So a lot of times when I'm talking to clients and you talk about obedience, they immediately go to sit and down and stay and all the what we call obedience commands, and that's what they perceive as if we teach these things that the dog will be obedient and that there's no other problems. And so I think that it's kind of a misunderstood word of what obedience is and how you get obedience and how you use the behaviors to get a dog to comply into obedience, and that just because a dog knows sit or down doesn't mean that they are obedient and doesn't necessarily mean that they have learned obedience. So Shannon, what's your thoughts on obedience when you hear the word obedience and as it relates to dogs and connection?
For me, really, obedience includes manners, appropriate behaviors at appropriate times, and that mainly you have control that the dog will do what you want when you tell it or in a certain scenario. Mm-hmm. And it goes across all areas of life, which I think people a lot of times focus on, like you say, having their dog sit or down, like just in their house. Yeah. And that is not an obedient dog. Your dog needs to be able to do that stuff sustained no matter where you are. Yeah. And I think that's a big challenge for people because they don't take their dog places because it's not good, and that hurts the dog because it'll never be good if you don't take it out and do things. Right. And so, for me, I mean, the main life part of that is manners for me, that the dog isn't like jumping on people, annoying people, going to see other people when it's supposed to be with you. You know, that's really how I see it in my life. Yeah.
Melissa, what about you?
When I think of obedience, I think of daily life and routines, and that the dog is involved in that, mm-hmm. a partner in it. I think of flexibility. So when I think of it, my dog's being obedient, it's when we're doing our normal thing at home, they join along, they sit when we settle, or they settle when we settle, they go when we go, and it's a two-way street. I don't think obedience is not us expecting our dogs to be robots. Yeah. But it's our dogs reading us and us reading our dogs, and that's what I think obedience is, at least for me.
Yeah. Michelle?
It's kind of funny because I feel like I come from a different perspective of life here.
Because I saved you for last.
Because I have professionally done obedience with one of my dogs. Uh-huh. So when I think of obedience, I think of those dogs, and literally I think of the dogs in the ring doing those things, mm-hmm. and it is more robotic, but they can do it anywhere with anything that is going on, mm-hmm. and you can ask your dog to do those things in any situation, not just in your house. So it's kind of, I feel like it's both for me. Okay. I see what you guys are all saying. Yeah. But I come from such a different world that the word obedience to me, I'm like, if you don't have standards that are up to them being able to go into a ring and do it with 100 people watching and dogs barking and all this chaos going on, your dog's not obedient. So I think I definitely have a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree. So what are some of the things you guys experience when you're going in for a consultation? I'll have people say, when we're talking about goals, and they say, well, I want my dog obedience trained. For me, I always ask them to define that because it's so different of what the perception You know, well, I don't want him jumping on people, and I don't want him this, and or I want to be able to take him out and go for coffee, and you know, so it's so different. That how do you, Michelle, differentiate what, you know, based on that and based on that statement, what direction you're going to go in to help the dog be obedient based on what the owner's goals are?
I mean, I think that depends on the people I'm talking to. If they're straightforward people, I will tell them what I feel like the difference is between obedience and having a dog you can live with. And then we go over their goals that way. If that means, like, do you want your dog, I guess in my, like, as I think of the word itself, obedient, I'm like, yeah, you're being obedient, you're complying to me. That is, you're obeying what I say.
Right.
So to me, that is a robotic thing. Where most people just really genuinely want a good dog that's gonna, like, live day-to-day life with them, right? Like, they don't care if, like, their dog sits every time the door opens. I mean, that's something we teach and we try to, you know, but it's not, most people, that's not their expectations. So I get, like, obedience is such a weird one for me because I really feel like I've had one client that I felt like really wanted obedience training. And that's because she wanted to compete with her dog.
Right.
Where everybody else, it is more of, yes, I want them to obey me in these situations, but not necessarily in other ones. So, yes, I go through obedience training with all of my clients in a sense. But it is not drilled home like it would be if somebody was going for obedience.
Right, into a competition type level.
Right.
Yeah. Melissa, what about you?
I usually have them tell me or list, like, what are qualities of dogs that you hate and what's your idea of a perfect dog, and is that what you think of as an obedient dog, and then we work within that.
Okay.
Of, like, what are there things that they definitely don't want, because, like, when I think, my definition of obedience is very different than other people's. Like, I've gone in and they say, oh, I want my dog to be obedient and all obedience stuff. I'm like, okay, so when your dog jumps on you, do this. I'm like, no, we want him to jump on us. We like when he does that. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
So I have to kind of, and it's totally different. And, like, my dogs get on the couch, but other people, like, their obedience training is that their dogs do not get on the couch. So it's very flexible for people.
It's a very broad word, and sometimes I will get into really driving the actual sit down, stay, come, heel. In some situations, if I feel like there's lower expectations in general in the home, that the home is a bit softer, I actually push the actual obedience training on them to get the results that I need. And if I have an overly structured, then I tend to be a little bit more eclectic or organic, or, you know, some just different than what maybe they perceive it as, just to help them soften down and be connected, because it's obedience is really about the connection that you have with your dog. When you ask them to do something, do they comply? Are they obedient into doing it? And yes, you're going to use the sits and the downs and the stays to get that, but to what level is really where, you know, as you come into training and we start talking about our other areas, that comes into play much heavier than just getting the dog to be obedient or connected to the owner that you're training, and you're asking the dog to do these things, and can the dog do it in a lot of different environments. Michelle, what are some of the things that you teach as it relates to obedience to create the connection with the owners?
That's a good question. Only because I really feel like my background, I feel like I have such a strong connection with Murphy because we went through so much work to get him to where he is. And I try to take that into my lessons, but again, I think that it depends on the person and the dog, because I think of my own life and what I consider obedient. I consider Murphy to be obedient. My other 3 dogs I do not consider to be obedient. They're very well behaved, but they are not obedient. If I ask Rainbow to come sometimes, he will never take off, but he'll just give me the bird, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I think that really depends. I do think, as you were just talking, Joe, it's kind of interesting because I really feel like, in a weird way, my more organic people, they naturally kind of do more of an obedient thing without me asking them to.
Yeah.
Where my people that are struggling with their dogs, I really focus on this. We're going to do sit today.
Yeah.
We're going to do down today.
Yeah.
Where everybody else, it's more of like, tell me what's going on in your life. Like, and they naturally will do the obedience themselves without me having to, because they just have that natural organic flow with their dogs.
Yep.
So with the obedience stuff, I think I use it. I focus more on people that I have a hard time connecting with, and I think I do it with people that are having a hard time connecting with their dogs, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yep.
In my mind, obedience is so much work.
Yep.
To get your dog to comply to all of those things every single time you ask them to, is not easy.
Yeah.
In fact, Murphy still sometimes at 7, I'm like, why are you not being obedient right now?
Yep.
Doesn't happen very often, but it happens.
Yeah.
Especially out herding. You guys have all seen it. So I think that's how I use it to connect people, is if they're having a hard time connecting, them putting in the time and the work with their dogs to make them realize that it's worth it to get their dogs to that level, to see the results they want.
Yeah. Melissa, what about you?
But the first thing that comes to my mind is when I'm working with people, and a lot of people, when I'm doing obedience work with them, they kind of get puffed up and they want to be like, oh, I need to be alpha, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you do not. And the one little thing I do to get them to soften is, like, when I have them sit, I'll teach an eye contact command. And some dogs, they don't like it, and so I'll do something different.
Yeah.
Like touch my hand with your nose kind of thing or something. But a lot of people, when they teach that with their dog, to look up at their face, the person softens, and that becomes a reward for the dog.
Yeah.
And I really think that builds a lot of connection.
Yeah.
And it's a lot on our energy that we think that, like, the dog looks at us, and so we go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're connected.
Right.
And the dog sense that energy. So I always mix that in when I'm doing obedience work, just to get people softened. Because when people turn on that alpha and they feel like they need to be alpha, which is not true, the dog's like, no, I'm not playing this game.
Yeah.
Or challenge accepted. And then that creates a whole new drama.
Right.
And that's one kind of trick I've found that helps.
Nice. Shannon, how do you feel like general obedience training creates connection with, even from your own dogs to the dogs that you would see come into the vet clinic to just watching dogs out and about?
Well, when your dog is, like, truly obedience trained, they're looking for you to give them commands and information of how to behave in every situation in life. And so, like, for example, people that come into the vet that have their dogs are trained, the dog is paying attention to the person. Like, the person comes and sits in their chair, and the dog sits right by them and watches them for information of what they should do. Sit here, lie down, just be, hang out. People that dogs are not trained that would come into the vet, come in, their dog's pulling them all over the leash, going to see all the people, going to see all the dogs, sniff all the things, pee on everything. They sit down, the dog's tingling all in the chair. They are, like, not paying attention to that person at all. Totally disconnected. Everything about the vet is exciting. We have to pay attention to everything there. And so if you train your dog to be obedient, to look to you for information, they will always look to you for information.
Right.
And sure, sometimes you can say, you don't need to pay attention to me. Yeah. And then they won't, but they'll come and check back with you. Right. Or when you call them to come back and check back in with you, they will. Yeah. So you don't have to micromanagingly be in control of your dog all the time, but you're really teaching them to look at you so that when you ask them to do something, they'll do it.
Right.
And that's how it translates out really into the world.
Great explanation, Shannon. In fact, I always say that me and Murphy have a partnership, not an owner-dog relationship like I feel like I have with my other dogs.
Yeah.
Because it sounds really bad that I'm demanding him to obey me. Like, it does. It sounds like I'm being dominant. Right. It sounds like... But he gets something out of it.
Yeah.
there's a release for him or a treat or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
We don't do treats anymore, but he's getting something out of it, so he's looking at me to get that reward.
Yeah.
So it is a partnership.
Sure.
Versus my other dogs, I don't feel that way.
Right. And I think that obedience training creates that partnership and that relationship. And then obedience is the dog complying and doing what you have taught or asked, or, you know, whether it's through the offering of behaviors or getting a dog into a rhythm, or literally asking them, if I ask you to sit, you sit. If I ask you to down, you down, no matter where we're at and what we're doing. So, you know, I think that from all of you guys, really what I'm gathering and what I would want everybody out there listening is obedience training is very important, and it should be done in very structured situations and also in very open and organic situations where we need to have manners in the house. And I'm not going to have to I shouldn't have to ask you to sit and not jump on people. There's a level of expectations with the manners, but then when I need you to do something, I'm going to command it and expect for you to follow that direction. And that's not any different than the rules on the road. I mean, there's a lot of obedience that has to happen out here as you're driving. So my challenge to everybody out there listening is, don't be afraid to get into the guts of obedience and training it, even if you're not going into the show world, because it all transfers and softens down into home of what the expectations are at home. You can, if you're listening to us, you can, you'll hear some funny noises. You can go over and see us all in the truck on our YouTube channel. And if you're watching us on YouTube and want to listen to us on the road while you're doing something different, you can go onto our podcast.